All right, so we have some very significant updates here on something that we have been worried about since October 7th, since the beginning of Israel's siege on Gaza, and that is the prospects of this turning into a much larger, broader conflict in the Middle East. And so we just got this news here today. Israeli drone kills deputy Hamas chief in Beirut, according to security forces. So here we go. Let's read a little bit of this. Deputy Hamas chief Salah al-Aruri was killed on Tuesday night in an Israeli drone strike on Beirut's southern suburbs of Dahiya, a stronghold of the allied Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, three security sources told Reuters. They say Lebanon's national news agency said 6 people were killed when the drone struck a Hamas office. 2 security sources said the strike had targeted a meeting and that another Palestinian militant commander was among them, but there were no details on the additional 4 casualties. So, since October 7th, okay, and this goes back a lot, earlier than that as well, but especially since October 7th, Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon have been sort of going back and forth in a tit-for-tat way and firing at each other. There have been people killed on both sides of that, towards the northern portion of that border with Lebanon and Israel. And this has always had the prospects of blowing up into something much more massive. We've had the idea that Hezbollah could launch an offensive, a full-on offensive from the north that has been floating around for a while. There's a lot that goes into that because Hezbollah is obviously backed by Iran. Iran views Hezbollah as sort of their greatest bulwark against Israel. And Hezbollah is not the same as Hamas. Okay, Hezbollah is much more significantly equipped and trained and better funded. It would be a serious situation if Hezbollah was to launch a full-on offensive in the north. And I think that there's been a lot of hesitation around that. I don't think that Iran would necessarily want to play that card if you want, because it's sort of like, if you play that card, this is absolutely going to spiral into a massive regional conflict. And so I think that there have been some sort of pieces that have been holding this back from happening. But as we've had this tit-for-tat going on, and as the war in Gaza continues to escalate, Hezbollah also feels some pressure to act against Israel because they are in opposition to what Israel is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza. And so the longer that this goes on in Gaza, the more likely that we are going to end up in a situation where this does escalate. And then you're fighting a massive sort of two-front war. You have, people in Gaza. You have your IDF troops in Gaza, your warplanes headed to Gaza. You're going to actually be fighting in the north if Hezbollah launches some sort of a larger scale mobilization against Israel from there. You're still dealing with the Houthis in Yemen, who have been attacking ships in the Red Sea, as well as firing some drones, some missiles in the direction of Israel. I don't think many of them have actually hit inside of Israel. The U.S. has been intercepting some of those. And recently, as I'm going to touch on here in a second, the U.S. has actually directly attacked the Houthis now. And we've had a couple other things that I'm going to touch on here. But essentially, this seriously is on a knife's edge. This is as close as we can possibly get to this completely spiraling towards having an all-out war involving the United States, involving Israel, involving the Houthis in Yemen, involving, Hezbollah in Lebanon, involving potentially Iran. And obviously, that doesn't need to be said that would be an unmitigated disaster. We're coming off 2-3 decades of endless wars in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria, in Afghanistan, and now we're talking about expanding that, okay? And by the way, take the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan from the U.S. perspective. If we were to go to war with Iran, it's not even comparable how much more disastrous that would be for everyone involved in that equation. But they continue here with more detail, saying that Mark Regev, an advisor to Netanyahu, told MSNBC that Israel had not taken responsibility for this attack, but whoever did it, it must be clear that this was not an attack on the Lebanese state. So, okay, first off, it was obviously Israel. I don't see any other, actor in the region that would have the motive or would have the capabilities of doing something like this. So it was Israel, right? So I'm not sure. Maybe, they're trying to be ambiguous here, but this was not an attack on the Lebanese state. So I guess the reason they're saying that is they don't want this to spiral because they know that would mean bad news for them if they do get a response directly from Hezbollah. He continued saying whoever did this did a surgical strike against the Hamas leadership. Okay, so they're really trying to go out of their way to say this was just an attack against this guy. We're not trying to spark off anything broader with Hezbollah. We're not trying to get involved with the Lebanese state itself. They say Aruri was deputy head of Hamas's Politburo and a founder of its military wing, the Qassam Brigades, which carried out the October 7th attack. He had spent time recently in both Lebanon and Qatar, which has mediated talks between Hamas and Israel, including on some of those hostage swaps that we saw since October 7th. The U.S., which brands Hamas a terrorist group, had last year offered $5 million for just information on this guy. Okay, so I guess maybe the United States is going to be having to dish out an additional $5 million on top of the $3.8 billion we give to Israel annually, and on top of the $10 billion we're trying to funnel to them right now, and on top of the weapons that we have been giving them, millions and millions of dollars in weapons, maybe sprinkle in an extra $5 million, I guess, because Israel just went and assassinated this guy. I mean, this is not good, man. Islamic Jihad vowed revenge in a statement, saying this crime will not go unpunished and the resistance will continue until the occupation is removed. Iran said that the killing would further galvanize the fight against Israel, while Yemen's Houthi movement expressed condolences. In Ramallah, the Israeli-occupied West Bank, hundreds took to the streets and are now protesting, urging retaliation. Okay, so now we have Gaza. In that situation, we have the West Bank that is exploding in protests and ongoing settler terrorism against Palestinians there, expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank. That could explode into an even worse situation. We have Syria and Iraq, where some elements have been launching some sporadic attacks against U.S. forces that are still stationed in these countries. So we have Syria, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Yemen, okay, and the West Bank and Gaza that are potentially all involved in what could spark into a massive hot conflict right now. Not good, man. They say Hezbollah chief Saeed Hassan Nasrallah plans an address on Wednesday to commemorate the 4th anniversary. Remember back when we killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian, top general, in a U.S. drone strike on Baghdad. Okay, so that was also, something that could have easily sparked off a direct war with Iran. That was an absolutely, disastrous move by Donald Trump. This was a guy, Qasem Soleimani, whatever problems you have with this guy, he was on the ground helping to fight ISIS, okay? Trump just assassinated him because we can, because we have drones hovering over all these different countries where we can just launch attacks anywhere, anytime, whenever we like, with no accountability whatsoever, just assassinating, foreign generals, right? In a televised speech in August, Nasrallah had cautioned Israel against carrying out any assassinations on Lebanese soil, vowing severe reaction. So tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to have this speech. Now, maybe he has this pre-planned speech about Qasem Soleimani. I would find it very difficult to think he's not going to mention this latest assassination, especially given that this happened on his soil. So, we'll have to see what he says there. If he ramps this up, and we get some sort of indications that there is going to be a much more significant attack from Hezbollah, then fucking buckle up, okay? Hezbollah has been exchanging near daily fire with Israel across Lebanon's southern border frontier since Hamas carried out the October 7th attack. Israeli airstrikes and shelling have killed more than 100 Hezbollah fighters and nearly 24 civilians since then, including children, elderly, and several journalists. Remember, I covered that story of, I believe it was a Reuters journalist who was directly targeted and assassinated while he was covering some of this that was happening in southern Lebanon. So this was what apparently the video looks like. Now, I can't 100% confirm this. I've seen this same video floating around from a number of different sources, so I think that this is what some of the aftermath looked like, okay? But this is apparently where that strike came down there. Now, we also had this update that came out just about a week ago. Israeli airstrike in Syria kills senior Iranian Revolutionary Guards member. So, again, we're going tit for tat here, okay? This can easily spiral. I don't think we've been this close to another serious, widespread hot war in the Middle East in a while, okay? And this is as the United States has been positioning warships in the area. Again, we've been now directly involved in attacks on Houthis, right? We're not doing this through some sort of a proxy. U.S. Army attacks 3 Houthi boats in the Red Sea, killing at least 10 fighters. Now, the part about this, the Houthis, that pisses me off the most, is that not only did we have all of, our support for Saudi Arabia and their genocidal campaign and slaughtering of civilians in Yemen for years, right? Obviously, we did that. But then also now, we have Houthis, the Houthi rebels, who are essentially launching attacks with one purpose in mind. And that purpose is to stop what Israel is doing in Gaza. That's what they're saying openly. These attacks on shipping vessels, right? They are happening because of what Israel is doing in Gaza, because Israel is launching a genocidal campaign against the Palestinians in Gaza. So you would think that the easiest solution to this, to prevent the economic consequences, remember I talked about billions of dollars have been lost from the Israeli economy in a short time because of some of these attacks, because now you can't have, there's a very densely packed, shipping lane that goes right by Yemen in the Red Sea. And, these ships are not able to go through there. They're refusing to go through there. The insurance premiums for ships that would travel through there are through the roof. So you have all of this economic consequence that's coming towards Israel as a result of these attacks. So with all of that, with the heating up of the tensions, okay, and being on the knife's edge as we are, you would think the easiest solution, the easiest path forward to stop this, okay, would be to stop Israel from continuing their genocidal campaign in Gaza, right? You would think. No, of course not. Instead, the United States and the UK and a couple other countries that are sprinkling in some resources here and there are essentially forming a coalition to go and attack the Houthis, right? So, I mean, I don't know what to say at this point. It's our leaders, our leadership class here in the United States, as well as in Israel, as well as in the UK, as well as in many of these other European countries, would rather get us into another massive, pointless, bloody, disastrous war in the Middle East than they would pressure Israel to stop slaughtering civilians in Gaza. That's the choice that they are making in front of us right now. And they're making it very clear, right? Obviously, Joe Biden is complicit in all of this and risking all of this because of his support for Israel, his unconditional support for everything they are doing. But we also have some guys who you would think should be like rotting in a jail cell somewhere. You would think could have been told to shut the fuck up by this point with all of their disastrous foreign policy decision making in the past. Guys like John Bolton, bloodthirsty psychopath. I mean, the West may now have no option but to attack Iran. I think we have a couple other options. I think there are other options that are potentially preferable than getting into a war that is going to get us absolutely nowhere other than bloodshed and violence and a completely destabilized Middle East, which look what that got us, right? In Afghanistan and Iraq, right? That worked out great, didn't it? And now they're talking about Iran, right? Again, Iran is not, this is not comparable even to those other wars, right? Iran is not the Taliban, and that war didn't work out for us. And so you're talking about going and attacking Iran. We also had Lindsey Graham hit Iran, blow it off the map. Blow it off the map. Look at how casually they talk about this shit. You want to blow Iran off the map, strap yourself to a missile, fire it in the air, fly it over there, hop yourself on the top of a drone, and you fly it over there, and go blow yourself up in Iran. If you want to do that, if you want to blow it off the map, go over there, strap a AK-47, whatever, an M4, and you go over there and fight in Iran. I'm not going to fight in Iran. I don't think most Americans want to go fight in Iran, or in Yemen, or in Lebanon, okay, or Iraq or Syria again. I mean, we learn nothing. We learn absolutely nothing from, it's not even like it's like 100 years in the past and we're forgetting the lessons of history. This should happen in my lifetime. Nothing was learned. They're still pushing this. Another thing, Israel also trying to get us into another war. War on Gaza. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, remember this guy? Calls on U.S. to bring down Iran. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed, he's writing journals in American outlets. The former leader also admits Israel was behind the assassination and sabotage operations in Iran. So here we go, guys. Again, I think the thing to watch out for as of right now is that speech that's going to be happening from Nasrallah tomorrow on Wednesday. So we'll have to see what he says. But, I mean, where this is going right now, the fact that Israel feels that even though Hezbollah has put those red lines in the sand and said, if you attack anybody on our soil, right, and do these assassinations, even if they are Hamas commanders or whatever, if you do that, then this is going to lead to severe consequences. The fact that Israel still feels confident enough to do this kind of a military operation, risking not just themselves and their own troops, right, and their own safety, but ours as well, implicitly, as Americans, who are the backers of them, I mean, it's just absolutely insane. This has to stop. This has to stop. I mean, eventually, you would hope that people would wake up. You would hope that seeing what's on the horizon with something like this, with a potential massive hot war breaking out in this region once again, that maybe people would start to ramp up the pressure on Israel. I've seen a little bit of it here and there from some politicians. Bernie's now calling aggressively to stop the funding to Israel, the $10 billion. I saw Elizabeth Warren today. She was calling for a ceasefire. There's a handful of people who are on the right side of this. But there's still just an alarming amount of our political class, of our leadership class, who is willing to destroy the futures of Americans who would have to go and fight in these wars, of the people who live in the countries over there. There are so many politicians who are willing to sell us out, to have us go fight and die for absolutely fucking nothing.